Thank you so much for joining us. My name is Naomi DeWinter. I serve as president of this fine institution here, and I know I worked with my faculty colleagues to um, have you here join us for this presentation. So I'm going to introduce one of our speakers, Brittany, and Brittany will introduce her colleague Heather, and then we'll get started. So Brittany Sowder is a survivor, speaker, author, and advocate dedicating to ending human trafficking and supporting survivors. Trafficked at the age of 15 in Iowa and Illinois, Brittany uses her powerful story to educate and inspire change. She is the founder of the Lighthouse Foundation, an organization committed to educating youth in communities across Iowa about human trafficking while providing hope and support to survivors.
This is Heather. She is also a co-founder of the Lighthouse Foundation and a dear friend. She has a heart for advocacy. Her dedication to fighting human trafficking and educating people has been a driving force behind the Lighthouse Foundation. She's deeply passionate about prevention through education and believing that knowledge is one of the strongest tools we have to protect our youth. Her compassion, wisdom, and unwavering faith inspire us daily at the Lighthouse, and I'm beyond grateful to have her by my side in this mission, and she will help present today. So we are going to start off with sharing a documentary with you guys. I'm in this documentary. It was filmed in 2014 by Breaking Traffic, which is a organization up in the Quad Cities area. We'll start it with that, and then we'll go from there. And these are all Iowa people in this.
When I was 7, my biological dad passed away, and my mom started dating another guy. He was like a nice guy at first, and then he became very abusive to my sister and I.
Growing up, I was raised in a single parent household in a loving home and was surrounded by friends and family. I moved around a lot, really pretty much just stuck to myself.
As a young child, I had a really good life. I was very involved with church. I was a good student. I had a lot of friends. I guess the only bad thing is when I was 6 years old, my parents got divorced.
When I was like 10 or 11, I ran away from my mom's house, got into trouble. I ran away from there with another girl. We went to her parents' house in Cedar Rapids, and her dad wasn't very nice either. He tried making us do things so he could get drugs and stuff from other people, and I left there. I think I was just walking down one of the aisles, and then a guy approached me, and I said, well, I'm just looking for some food to get, and he said, do you have any money to get it? And I said, no. Asked me if I wanted a modeling job, and he told me that I'd have all this money and that I could have food and shower and all this stuff. And then I went with him. He had some people from Chicago come, and another girl came. He told me that I was going to go with them, and when I refused to go with them, they took my pants off and beat me with a belt. And then they put me in their van and took me to Chicago.
When I was 13, my mom met my stepdad. That was a big change for me, and my mom was always working. My dad would come home, and he was just very controlling and an alcoholic and verbally abusive. I believed that I wasn't worth anything, and I was just better left out of the picture. I went to high school. I got involved with the wrong crowd. The ones that were doing the drugs and their parents did drugs, and got involved with sneaking out. After graduating high school, I was introduced to coke for the first time. I walked out of the room and said that I didn't need that I didn't want that. I still just kept drinking with them, and as the night went on and it was presented to me, I eventually gave in. My mom had kicked me out several times, and I actually ended up staying in my car for a week. My drug addiction became worse, and the alcohol, I was not just going out on the weekends, but now it was every day of the week. My life was out of control, and I didn't see it myself, but everyone around me had told me to get help. At the time, I had friends that were strippers, and to me looked glamorous. They made it look like they were making a bunch of money and men wanted to be with them, and I knew that was something that I wanted to do. I worked with the stripping not very long until I actually found that there was an escorting business that was here locally in the Quad Cities that I could get a hold of.
When I was 14 years old, I started smoking marijuana here and there and just experimenting with that. When I was 16, I was at a party and there was a lot of drugs and alcohol there. I had drank a lot. The next thing I remember is waking up in a park and my pants were off and I was left just laying in the park. After that, I didn't really know how to feel, how to act, what to do. I didn't know who to talk to about it. But all I did was just block people out. I didn't let anyone in. Later that year, I started dating a boy from school. He was a marijuana dealer and quickly after began selling cocaine. And that's when everything really spiraled out of control. I quit going to school. I moved out of my house. I was just on cocaine every day, all day. Our relationship became very abusive, physically, emotionally. Shortly after breaking up with him, my mom stepped in and she finally committed me to rehab. I was 18 then. While I was in rehab, I met a girl there. So when we got out of rehab, I moved in with her, and I didn't think my life could get any worse. And I went from cocaine to crack cocaine. I had met another man. For a while there, we were just going to Chicago and Rockford and picking drugs up and bringing them back. After a couple times of doing that, we were in Chicago, and basically he said, this time to get them, you have to prostitute yourself, and this is what's going to happen. We're going to go to a hotel, and this is what you're going to do.
They took me to their van and took me to Chicago with that other girl and left us at a house that was really old and would look run down, and there were people standing outside with guns. And he left me there with a guy, the pimp. He came into the room and he took pictures of me and posted them on Craigslist. And he gave me a cell phone that I had to answer when someone called. There were people outside my door watching my room. And I had to do stuff like sexual things with guys whenever they would come, and then give the money to the guy outside my room. There was a girl who tried running away, and then he brought us all into the same room and told us all that if we did what she would try to do, then we were gonna get beat like she did, and he beat her in front of us.
Working for the escorting business, I knew I'd make a lot more money and it'd be easier. She also had told me that I'd be going by another name, and this would be a nickname that nobody else knew me by. I also was told to slip the money under the door. She had someone that would take the money from me. I remember after a week, I had wanted to quit and I wanted to get out, but because I was renting from her, I didn't feel that there was any way that I was going to be able to get out of this. I would meet clients at hotels in their house and sometimes truck stops. Because of the drugs and alcohol, I was so numb, but at the same time, I was always afraid, and I felt like I was living two different lives, two different identities. I did this for over a year and dealt with feelings of shame and guilt and depression and wanting to get out. I didn't want my family to know about it. It wasn't until I had got my second DUI, I needed a ride home and got a ride from a guy across the street. He took me to a drug house where I was raped by multiple men.
I met another man and he took me to Memphis, Tennessee. And when we got there, I quickly realized what was going to happen again. I feel like it was more the drugs than anything holding me there. But it was also him because he knew that he had that power over me. And if I didn't work that day and I didn't go out and prostitute myself, I couldn't have any. I was just taken advantage of every day, and I was raped constantly. I was beaten. I was stole from. I was just stripped of everything physically and emotionally. I remember walking down the street one day and a cop pulled over, and you could obviously tell by looking at me, I'm not okay. There's something going on. And he just said, "Are you okay?" And I said, "Yeah, I'm fine." Because I was just so scared. I didn't want to go back to a police station. I just remember after he pulled away, I was just like, I just wanted him so badly to come back, and I couldn't change that. And then a part of me wanted to just go back so bad, but where was I going to go? Who was I going to call? And who was going to come get me? Because who really cared?
There was a day that I got a call on the phone about someone who wanted to come, and the guy that came into the room pretended that he was going to do all those same things that every other person did, but he ended up being an undercover police officer, and he arrested me and took me to the Cook County Police Department, and he questioned me. I was only 14 going on 15, and I told him how old I was. He knew that I ran away because I told him I did, because I wanted to go back home.
I decided that I couldn't do it anymore. One of the police officers told me that I needed to get help, otherwise they were going to see me dead in a ditch, like they've seen many times with other girls.
So I was stuck in a little jail in Arkansas. That was my bottom. That was when I just realized, like, I cannot live like this anymore. I felt like I was slowly dying. I called my mom, and she said, she'd be there to get me. And I've been clean since October 2009, and that was it. I just never looked back.
I don't know what happened to me to happen to anybody else. Anybody could pick you up. And it all happens really quickly. But I think a lot of the people that do the human trafficking stuff have less of a chance of getting caught in a smaller community is what they're thinking.
It's really important who you surround yourself with now, and I never reached out to any of my mentors or teachers or even family because I felt like they couldn't relate or they didn't know what they were talking about. And I think many times that these people are truly in your life and they do care. And if it's someone that you trust, it's really important to talk to someone because you don't have to make those bad decisions or go down that road.
My mom is a wonderful lady. When I got home, it was just open arms and love, and there was really no reconciling to do. When you hit those teen years, no one likes their parents. They're all crazy, they're old, they don't understand, but your parent is going to be your best friend, and they're the ones who are going to be there for you forever. And it's just so important to not follow in your friends and what they do and do what you think's right. And if I could go back, there's so many things. Like I would never have smoked that first joint, and I would never have popped that first pill because that is what took me to this life. It could happen to anyone. I mean, you hear all these crazy stories, but that's never going to be you, and it could be.
Don't have to ask with the much. A smile can change the world. Change the world. Don't say too late. It's never too late, no. But you can change your mind. Change your mind. All the little morning rain. Give your everything. Cause the little thing, there'll be big someday. What was seeing, what was thinking.
Alright, so in that video, you saw myself, Sarah, and Christy, all survivors of human trafficking. And that's kind of what we're here to talk about today. So as college students, you're constantly online, whether from school, social media, or entertainment. With that convenience comes risks, though, risks that traffickers and predators take advantage of. I know the dangers firsthand. I was trafficked at a young age. I was 15 and a freshman in high school. And if I had been educated on these dangers, my story might have been different. That's why I'm passionate about equipping people with knowledge to stay safe. Today we'll discuss the hidden dangers of online, how traffickers operate, and how you can protect yourself and others around you. You guys kind of heard my story. You guys kind of heard my story a little bit in that video. I'll give you a more thorough but still quick rundown of it just because of the time limit that we have. So I was placed in a group home in Iowa City when I was 14. My birth mom abandoned me while I was there. She didn't believe what was going on at home with her boyfriend who was abusing me. When I found out that my mom had moved away and stopped shopping and no longer wanted to talk to me, I chose to run away with another girl. That girl and I went to Cedar Rapids to her dad's mom's house. And while we were there, her dad tried to get us to use or to help him get drugs and money in various different ways. I was able to leave that situation. And I was walking around a Hy-Vee grocery store in Cedar Rapids when a little bit older gentleman approached me, probably in his 20s, and started asking me questions, got to know me. My intent in Hy-Vee was to, at that time, take food because I was hungry and I had nowhere else to go. And he got to know some more about me, and then he offered me a modeling job. And that modeling job ended up turning into me being trafficked. So the first time I was trafficked was in an apartment where he took me back to, and then a house in Cedar Rapids where I was trafficked multiple different times, and then I was taken to Chicago. And while in Chicago, I experienced many different things. I was left at a drug house, and then some other people came and took me to some hotels where I was trafficked. So I was trafficked in a Super 8, a Red Roof Inn, Budget Inn, and a few other ones. And a part of what happened there, so the process that the trafficker that I was with used was they took pictures of me from my neck down, posted them on Craigslist and Backpage at that time. And then there was a cell phone that was in my room that would ring, and there'd be inbound calls of people calling. The phone number on those ads coming in, leaving money with the guy at the door, so I never saw any of the money. And ultimately, they got to do whatever they wanted. And then after that, that happened continuously. There's a lot more details that I could go into. However, I wrote a book that I'll share with you later. But one of the phone calls that I got, so this happened over the span of June 2007 to October of 2007. And on October 24th of 2007, I got a phone call that to me seemed like just another, they call him John, coming in to do the same things everybody else had done to me. And that person gave the money to the guy at the door, and I remember him coming in, sitting down on the bed, and asking for help to take his pants off. And when I went to go help him, he responded that he was an undercover officer and that I was under arrest. So ultimately, I found out they were doing a sting operation on the trafficking ring that I was being held in. I was brought back to the Cook County Police Department, where I was questioned, photographed, fingerprinted. And after a while of being interrogated, they found out how old I was. I looked older for my age at 15. They found out how old I was, found out that I was a runaway from Iowa, and ultimately they brought me back to my sister, and then I was placed in the state training school in Toledo. That state training school is now closed. I spent 9 months at the state training school, and then I was placed in my first foster home in Story City, where I was then adopted. And I don't know if you guys know what Youth and Shelter Services is, but it's an organization out of Ames that my mom worked for, and that's how I started sharing my story. They gave me the opportunity to write my story out and share it with the people there, and it just went from there. My foster mom, she was still my foster mom at the time. I was living with her for a year before she knew that I had even been trafficked, so nobody had shared it with her. Actually, fall of last year, I got to see my files from when I was a juvenile, and there was about this much written in there about what had happened during that time. And it's one of the things that we advocate for, because a lot of times children who have been trafficked are put in the foster care system and people just don't hear about it or don't know about it, and there's not a process to screen for that yet. But anyway, so I was in her care for a year before she knew that I had been trafficked. And how she found out was a gentleman from Cook County called and asked for me. And I would have been, so the 09, January of 2009, so I would have been 17 when my mom got that call. So yeah, so about a year. And she said, "Who's this?" And he said, "Well, I'm looking for Brittany." My last name was Powell at that time. And she asked him something else. My mom explains this so much better than me, because she was the one that took the call. But ultimately, she hung up on him and said, "Nobody calls my house for my daughter."
Especially a male.
Yes, that was the other thing. So then a lady called back, and it was the prosecuting attorney in Cook County, and my mom was a little bit nicer to her, and she said, "Well, Brittany's being subpoenaed to come testify against one of the men that trafficked her," and my mom's mouth dropped to the floor. So my mom had never heard of trafficking. She thought third world countries, like, this doesn't happen here. And here I was standing in her kitchen. So she had a conversation with that lady and a conversation with me. And that conversation came down to, like, is it safe for Brittany to go there and testify? And the answer that the lady gave my mom was there was no guarantee, because this guy was on the lower level, not lower level, but one of the smaller people in the trafficking ring that I was in. And there could be other people still not wanting me to testify. So we did not go to testify. That guy got 6 months in jail for whatever else he was caught for. However, that then turned into my mom and I, for a very long time, advocating for it together. I got married in 2016 and had children, so I stopped for a little bit. This past fall, I found another way to share my story with many different people, and that was through my book. So I wrote a book. It's this one. It is called She Survived. It's also available on Amazon, so it shares my story in more detail. It's fiction / nonfiction, so we're talking like the story. What I mean by that is the story is very much so true. When you get into the trafficking piece of it, it's got different character names, different locations, places, ages, all of that stuff is very different. Just for privacy reasons, I chose to do that at the beginning. It's a very easy read, so I made it easy for middle school through young adult, just because that's the age range that I was trying to reach. And the purpose of my book is to reach many different people. and just hope in hopes of bringing hope to somebody. It's not an easy topic, and there's lots of people that could potentially benefit from it because there is hope at the end of the tunnel. Not everything is dark, and I feel like that my story could just bring light to someone. So that's that. Go to the next slide. So we will go over some basic understanding of risks and what human trafficking is a little bit, those sort of things. To the first one, and I'll go from there. We changed our presentation a little bit to make it more focused on college. Our basic presentation that we do is more community based, in hopes that there's young adults and high schoolers and stuff in the audience, but we changed it up a little bit, so bear with us.
Bear with us just a little bit. But I love our video that you guys just watched because it shows Brittany in that time frame. And then you're able to see her now and what she has healed through and what she continues to heal through. And you can see that she has had a family and she's had children. And so if you are ever in that situation, because they always tell us as we've learned and continue to move forward with education and awareness, and as we continue to present, there's usually teenagers, college students, adults that have either been trafficked, are being trafficked, or know someone that has been trafficked. So when she talks about hope, you see what she went through, even no matter what period of time someone may have gone through, there is hope. There is life after something like that, even with abuse or anything that someone has gone through. So that's why I really, really love this video, even if some people feel it's outdated, because it just shows so much hope. The internet is a powerful tool. It also comes with serious risks. Hackers, scammers, and predators use different tactics to exploit people. For example, phishing scams trick you into revealing personal information, while catfishing creates fake identities to manipulate victims. This happens all the time. You're always seeing things on Facebook, left and right. People are hacking into your accounts. You have to tell your friends and family, do not accept this request. Those are things that traffickers are getting into. They can copy and paste a photo from anywhere, from anyone, and say that they're this person. Do you really know that person on the other end that you're talking to? One of the biggest threats today is how traffickers use social media, online platforms. They know college students are looking for jobs, relationships, but just a connection because you're so far away from your family, your friends. Some of you are down the street from your family and friends. Others have moved from out of state to go to colleges in certain areas. They use that to their advantage. Traffickers pose as modeling scouts, job recruiters, or even romantic partners. Maybe they'll meet you in a gym and start to get to know you. Oh, what is your workout routine? Oh, let me show you how to lift this, or different things like that. They send some of their recruiters in college campuses that work for them, and they want them to get to know the students. We know that this happens. This isn't something that we're just using it as an example. This actually does happen, and they get to know these students. They create a rapport with them, become friends with them, whether it's romantic partner or friends.
Yep. So just an example of that, my mom was an advocate for a girl out of Knoxville who went up to Northwest Iowa to go to college, and she was trafficked by her boyfriend. Her boyfriend's dad actually out of the college, and she still had her normal college life. So it does happen. I just want to interject real quick one other thing, that if you ever get the opportunity to see the documentary Grid Shop, I suggest going to see it. It's very informative, and the person that I'm speaking of is in that, as well as my mom and some other people. But yeah, if that ever comes up as an opportunity for you to see it, I'd love the
And
documentary.
if you are meeting someone and you feel like you're sharing all of your personal information, but they're only sharing who they are. They don't really share where they come from or what their family life is, but they know everything about you and all of your history and your family history. It's a huge red flag because we all have history, good and bad. And if it's only one-sided, proceed with caution, because why aren't they sharing? That's definitely a red flag. So ask questions, Be the nosy neighbor. And if you have a friend who is talking to someone or dating someone and it's been several months and they still know nothing about this other person, but this person knows everything about them, become that nosy friend. You just never know, because that's what happened in this instance that Brittany is talking about. This person knew everything about her, but she knew hardly anything about him. And he was just very secretive about it. And he just kind of shook it off as, oh, his family wasn't much and there wasn't much to know, until she saw a text about a family event. And then she pushed and pushed and pushed to go. And he let her come, and ended up being her worst nightmare. So just really there's nothing wrong with asking questions. Protect yourself, protect your friends. And if someone really isn't being forthcoming, why? Maybe it's just because it's personal or private, because they went through a traumatic event and they just don't want to share that. But just make sure that you're asking the right questions.
All right, so some social media safety tips. How many of you have posted your location in real time before?
Be honest.
Yeah, be honest. It's okay. No,
Yeah.
you're not being graded on these questions. Maybe tag your restaurant or your dorm room. While it seems harmless, traffickers use that information to track people's habits and locations. Just want to give you a few key safety tips. So check your privacy settings. Make sure your accounts aren't public. Avoid oversharing. Do strangers really need to know where you are or where you study? It's just something to keep in mind. Watch out for suspicious messages. If someone reaches out and their profile seems fake or the conversation feels off, trust your instincts, like Heather was saying. If something doesn't feel right, just block, report them, and move on. Don't continue to try and have a conversation with them. They are very sneaky, but like they're very tactful, I guess. I don't know how to put it. There's just it's hard to say no sometimes when you start having that conversation and you feel like that person truly means well, but you never know. Like just be cautious of those things.
Well, even on location, like Snapchat, sometimes it's automatic and you don't realize that you're on the map. Like, why do you really need to know that someone's stopping at Casey's to get a soda, or that they pulled into the library? Like, what is that benefiting you? Or why does your friends need to know that you're pulling in a parking lot at Walmart? I personally don't understand that. I don't have my location on anything. And so when I see all these teenagers, and I don't know how much it is in college, I'm sure it is just as much as it is in the high school, but I see it in the high school students, and they'll literally pull their maps up at games. Oh, well, she stopped at Walmart before she came to the game. What is that anybody's business? We know that the traffickers, for a fact, are hacking into iCloud accounts and taking photos out of these iCloud accounts, and they're using them as blackmail. Do you think that they can't hack into your Snapchat accounts as well and steal locations? So this isn't something that we're just trying to helicopter over. It's just really important that it's not for everybody's business. Just keep your stuff private. Not everybody needs to know this.
One of the main reasons we talk about online now is just because it's not like trafficking isn't so much abduction like it was back then.
Mhm.
Like since we're more online driven now, they found a new way to target people. So that's why when we share about online safety, that's the intent behind it, because that's where they're preying on people at. So
Online dating has also become a part of normal life. It's one of the most common ways that traffickers lure their victims in. Grooming is a process where the predators gain trust. Over time, it starts with attention, flattery, purchasing of gifts. If you see friends or family members that they're getting more lavish bags or clothing, shoes, different things like that, things that they would not normally have, that's kind of a red flag. If Joe Smo over here really has no job, but he's able to purchase all these items, where's he getting the funds from? Make sure that you kind of start thinking about those things. They also start making them feel really special, and they want to spend all this time with only one person. So they start isolating that person, whether it's male or female, because traffickers are male and female. It's not just on the male end. So if your friend starts being isolated where they're only spending time with that one person, And it could be, I just enjoy their company. But they have a way with their words and to make them feel that they are just so special that they just want to be with them 24/7. They're very good at manipulating the situation. Someone who moves too fast. After 2 weeks, I just love you. I love you so much. I just want to spend all my time with you. So, do we really love someone after 2 weeks or even after 3 weeks? Just super cautious again. Private photos. Again, there was a case in Iowa City where a 16-year-old had her iCloud account hacked. The traffickers took nude photos that she had sent to her boyfriend, and they were using it as blackmail against her. This is happening. So again, we're not here to preach on what is right and wrong. It's just about your safety because these things are happening and awareness. Always verify again who you're talking to. Like we said, anybody can create a fake account. Sometimes you really believe it's them. They might know things because they've had conversations or they've done their research. So know your people. They took a photo of someone and they put it on a Snapchat account or whatever the social media profile is. Make sure you know who you're actually talking to and you know details or ask questions that they only would know. Whether it's family related or a story or history or something that might have happened in school or a class. Yep.
All right, so let's talk about what human trafficking is. Many people picture someone being kidnapped or locked away, but that can be a myth. In reality, most trafficking happens through coercion, manipulation, or force. There's two types of trafficking. So there's labor trafficking, forcing someone to work against their will, and then there's sex trafficking, using force, fraud, or coercion for sexual exploitation. Traffickers don't always look like criminals. They can be boyfriends, friends, employers, even people your own age. They manipulate victims into compliance, and by the time someone realizes what's happening, they feel trapped. That's why awareness is key. I wish we had our other slide up. So
I know.
In Ames, there was a nurse practitioner that got arrested not long ago for trafficking, 15-year-old boys. There's been, the one that my mom advocated for, it was her boyfriend. I know someone that was trafficked by their family member. So it can be anybody. It's not just one person.
There's a woman in Iowa that was trafficking her teenage daughters to pay rent and buy groceries. And an officer brought her daughter back to their home. Because she had run away and she brought her back and he was standing there and daughter didn't want to go home. She wanted to go home because she was being trafficked. And the mom clearly had said something in the home when he brought the daughter back about what was going on. And that's what she was doing. She was selling her teenage daughters to pay their bills. So it's like Brittany said, it happens in your family. It happens everywhere. College students are also a target because the traffickers know that you are looking for jobs. You're looking for internships. They'll often say, oh, we have this great internship. We need you to meet at this address, at this hotel. And it might sound legit because it's in a hotel lobby or a conference room. So if you're approached by that, bring a friend, tell someone about the opportunity, make sure that someone knows where you're at all times. Do not go by yourself and don't make it secret. And if they tell you to make it secret or don't tell everyone about it, they might say, we just don't want, 500 people showing up.
Just don't go at this point.
Yeah, don't go because that has happened. We did hear a story a while back where someone did notify one of the organizations that they thought trafficking was happened because they were approached. And then when they were, a job in Kansas City. And then they didn't end up going, but it was starting to get suspicious. So just really think about it. If it doesn't feel good, don't go. Tell someone. Give law enforcement the information. If it's unfounded, what is the worst thing that you did? It wasn't unfounded. It doesn't matter. If you see something, say something. And if nothing becomes of it, nothing becomes of it. Because you might be saving a life. You might be shutting something down. That might be the missing puzzle that they needed to break a case. So just make sure, fake job offers, boyfriend, or peer recruitment. Somebody may have gotten themselves into it and they've been manipulated, they've had blackmail over them, and now they're sending them out to recruit. That happens. And they might say, oh, you can make $1,000 this weekend because there's this big football game. It's just sex, $1,000. What college kids, some of them need that $1,000. So they think, oh, that girl, she really needs that money. Go find her. It's not just sex, guys. It really isn't. They're going to lure you in. They're going to hold it over your head. They're going to make sure there's pictures of you taken in that moment for whatever's going on that weekend. And then the next time another event comes, guess who they're going to call? And then they're going to say, this is what we have over your head. And then it's going to keep happening, and it's going to keep happening, and it's going to keep happening. So it's not just one time, even if that's what they promise.
All right, so protecting yourself and others. Now that you know the risks, let's talk about prevention. So trust your instincts, like Heather was talking about. What situation feels off, it probably is, right? Use safe communication. When meeting with someone new, do it in a public place or tell a friend.
Got ahead of myself.
Yeah, she got ahead of herself a little. Look out for others. If you see a friend in a questionable situation, check in with them. You know, they may just be waiting for someone to check in with them because they're scared to come out and say it themselves. Traffickers prey on vulnerability, but when you stay informed and aware, we take away their power.
Yep, resources and how to get help. If you or someone you know is in a dangerous situation, there are resources to help. There is the National Human Trafficking Hotline. I suggest everybody put this in their phones or take a picture of it.
There's the state one and the national one. Since we're in Iowa, I'm gonna reference. I would say put the Iowa one in. The national hotline a lot of times is backed up. They don't have a whole lot of staff there. Take both, call it into both. Doesn't hurt. Obviously local campus safety, and then the stophtiowa.org.
Yeah.
I want to walk that around real quick.
Yep.
So that's a website that you can go in if you're. I mean, it doesn't necessarily have to be on campus that you're paying attention to things. If you're out walking to the grocery store,
red up here
or-
in your phone, it's really easy. And then up here, there's a drop-down box menu right at the front, and then it says report. So you can report it.
report just about anything there that's suspicious in regards to human trafficking. So like we had a volunteer that was coming to an event in Pella back earlier in February now. So in January, and he had stopped at a gas station and
type in whatever.
there was a gentleman in there that had bought a coffee and a Mountain Dew. Wouldn't think anything of it, but he saw him go out to his vehicle and he lifted up the backside of his van and stuck the Mountain Dew in the backside. He closed it and then went and got the driver's seat. So that was an instance where he used that website to go in and report that license plate and just what he had seen. And there's people on the other side of that, monitoring that, and you never know, you might be the fifth person to report it. So
And it's
utilize
really
that
easy.
website for sure.
Yeah.
If there's something that you see that's suspicious.
It's super easy to use, and if you think it's nothing, it doesn't matter. Again, like we said, if you see something, say something, because it really doesn't matter. If it's nothing, it's nothing. Let someone else decide that it's nothing.
There's another resource that I want to give. It's also in my book. There are five safe houses in the state of Iowa that help human trafficking survivors. There's one in Indianola called Garden Gate Ranch, one in Des Moines called Dorothy's House. There's a youth one in Pella called Freedom House. There is Wings of Refuge in Ames, and Lila Mays over in Sioux City. And then there's a couple other organizations like ours. So Chains Interrupted is in the Cedar Rapids area. They do education and different survivor services there with youth, so people under 18. Ours is mostly prevention education right now, for just about anybody, public agencies, communities, schools, colleges.
But we also, if someone needs something and you
We can
remember,
connect you
yeah,
to a
if you
resource.
remember today, like you're talking to someone and you said, oh, the Lighthouse came and talked to us. We have their brochure.
It has
Connect.
our email on it.
Yeah, connect with us because we have resources. We can connect someone to something no matter what, because we do have resources. That is also what one of our goals is resources for people. But right now, we're just really hammering down on education and awareness. Call to action. Now we want to challenge all of you. Protect yourself online. We cannot emphasize how important it is to protect yourself online. Go into your privacy settings. Be very mindful on what you're sharing. We know that the fad out there is to share everything, whether you're walking down the hall, you're going to the mall, all the things that you're doing, having your location on. But just be very mindful and tell your friends to be very mindful on what you're sharing. Educate. Tell your people what you learned today. Call your parents. Guess what I talked to about today? Guess what I saw? Did you know? Just share it. Share it with anyone.
You never know who else might be needing that education. So share it with one person. Share it with 10 people. That's the best takeaway we can have from today is just sharing with other people and being aware.
And get familiar with what you have on campus. If you have a crisis center on campus or a website or someone who takes care of everything here, get familiar with it in case you do come across someone. When we were in Ames a couple of weeks ago, they had the gal that does their crisis intervention there. Yeah, Iowa State. And so it's just nice to get familiar with those people because you may not need it, but someone else might. And then if you happen to be around them or you come across someone, then you know what's available in your own school campus. And be vigilant. Something, again, we've said it over and over. We all have a gut instinct. If it doesn't seem right, it probably isn't. Walk away from it or report it. Again, we have the hotlines. Make sure you know them. Put them in your phones. Take a picture of it. Put it in a folder so you have all of that information. Staying aware and informed. You're not just protecting yourself, but you're also preventing from trafficking potentially happening to someone else. Thank you so much for having us. If you have any questions, we would love to hear them.
I'll use the last less minutes for questions.
Yeah, we'd
Anyone
love to
has a
hear if
question?
anybody has any questions. Go ahead.
This is kind of a tough one. It's for both of you, Brittany especially.
Okay.
Do you think they have a script? And I guess to go a little further with that, they know what they're doing, right? Like beating one of the girls in front of the other girls to show that dominance, right? Do you think they educate each other, or do you think that that young girls are just so vulnerable that it's easy to manipulate?
Could you ask the first part of that again? Because I kind of heard it, but I kind of.
Do you think they educate each other? Do you think they pass on the tools of manipulation?
Like the traffickers?
Yes.
Is that what you're asking?
Yes.
On the tools of
Like if one trafficker says, this is working for us, let's use this. This didn't work for us.
possibly. I don't know that I have.
It's a tough question.
That is a tough question.
And then my other question would be: do you ever speak to law enforcement agencies? Do you ever put on like informational like
Not
this?
yet.
You should.
Yet.
You should. And
We've had law enforcement at some of our presentations when we present with Stacy through Team Iowa. Most of the time, she has a state trooper with her or a local law enforcement agent in the area of the town she's presenting at. But we've never.
Spoke in front of like a group of law.
so I'm a retired Illinois state trooper,
Okay.
and a few years before I retired, was just a couple of years ago, we encountered this in a rural area, and it just kind of fell in our laps, or else we really wouldn't have known what it was. Right? We would have just thought it was a domestic abuse situation, and it made us kind of take a step back and say, "Oh my God, how many times have we missed this?" Right. So we did have a group come in and talk to us, and I really think that's the key, because officers need to. You guys have said it about 10 times now. Why not just say something? You see something, say something.
Yeah.
You might be wrong,
Right.
but so what? And I would love for all police officers to have that kind of an attitude.
Yeah.
Hey, this might be bigger than just.
Maybe that's your next job.
Yeah. Well, so that I love challenges, and I'm not afraid to walk up to anyone. No business to ask them to bring us in. So part of the drive with legislation is to have a multi-functioning group of people
Sure.
who is trained with trafficking, to have a judicial system to charge and oversee trafficking, because that is
Here in
something we're
Iowa.
lacking in Iowa.
A specialty court,
Yes.
which is what we're studying this week.
So,
kids.
if you can have your fellow students be writing into legislation
Personally.
personally, because they do not want copy, paste. They will toss those out. So that is part of the legislation agenda, is for a multi-functioning group of people. And so if you could write to them, tell them that exact thing that you just shared with us, that would be wonderful. Because it is a great question. And we've heard stories where one person came in with a crowbar and they asked how old the gal was. So they beat her 16 times with it. And she stood there and didn't cry because she was afraid. She had no idea what was going to come next. Do I shed tears or do I just stand there? And she just stood there. And then the woman said, now you're going with this man. And so every situation is different. You have no idea what you're going into. You're promised this and you're not getting that. You just have to be so cautious, and awareness is the most important tool you can have in your toolbox. Knowledge in your toolbox, because what you do with it later can keep you from a very sticky situation. I firmly believe that knowledge is power, and the more tools we have in our toolbox, the more safer we can be for ourselves and everyone else around us.